Hi, welcome to Dean Park Station. I'm Dave Watson. I'm the designer and the creator of the layout. In this video I'm going to show you how to look after your airbrush, how to dismantle it, to clean it and then to reassemble it so it gives you years and years of trouble-free use. If you've not yet got an airbrush but you're thinking about maybe buying one, this video might be of use to you because it shows you how easy it is to maintain and look after one properly. If you have any questions, please do get in touch. The most popular types of airbrushes are the single action and the dual action airbrush. I would always recommend a dual action airbrush because it gives you control on how much paint comes out the end. With a single action, it's no more really than a glorified aerosol. You've not got as much control over the paint flow unless you've got a compressor which has got a pressure and air pressure adjustment. So with the dual action, if I press down the trigger, air will flow out, no paint. As I pull the lever back, it will then allow paint to flow from the cup into the chamber and mix with the air. Obviously, the more I pull the trigger back, the more paint is allowed to come out, hence the more paint will come out the end. It's very simple once you've got the knack of using it, and it gives you that kind of control so you can feather paint to a surface. You do a lot more weathering. So if you're going to do any weathering, go for a dual action airbrush. The compressor I use is not a fancy one. I did previously have a compressor like this without the air tank, but what I found latterly was that it was having to fire up to increase the amount of air, and it was affecting my paint flow and the air flow, and it was becoming difficult to do a large area without stopping and stuttering. So I invested in one with an air tank, and the model of this one is an AS-186S, and if you Google that you'll see many different manufacturers of that particular compressor. On off switch there, the main compressor here, the air tank there, and this here is to allow any moisture to be removed from the actual air before it passes into the tube to go to the airbrush. You don't want moisture mixing in with your paint, then you get kind of watery, it spits water and that just ruins your paint finish. This has got an adjustable pressure gauge with there, and it's good for, again, for varying the pressure depending on what kind of paints you're using and what job you're doing. Final piece, I'd always get a braided hose for your airbrush. Don't go with a rubber one, go with a braided one. They last longer and they're better quality. What I've got here is the equipment that I require when I'm doing painting, whether it's by hand or indeed by airbrush. To the left I've got the X20A thinner, and that's an acrylic thinner, and that goes with acrylic paints. And there's a small plastic pipette there which I will use to decant some of the thinners into a mixing pot with the paint to get the right consistency before putting it through an airbrush. You tend to have to thin paints down before you airbrush them, or you could clog the nozzle and you'll not get a good quality finish with the painted surface. The enamel thinners in the tub here, they go with the enamel paints, whether it's Rail Match, which certainly do need thinned if airbrushing. You've got the Umbro, and you've even got precision paints as well. Again, I use a pipette to put in a mixing tub. I don't anyway, I don't even use the same pipette. I use one for the acrylics and I've got a separate one for the enamel. Enamel and acrylic should not meet. You can apply them to the same surface provided one type is thoroughly dry, but when it comes to mixing, it's enamel with enamel thinners, acrylic with acrylic thinners. Now it's amazing how many people don't follow that simple rule and end up with horrendous results. You can also use tap water for thinning down the acrylic paints, but I would advise using a proper acrylic thinner. I've also got this little Tamiya paint stirrer, and that is, you get a pack of 2, and it's good. It's got a little paddle here for decanting paint and for stirring, and at the other end it's got a kind of little spoon, which I don't tend to use too much, but it'd be good for small quantities of paint. I'd avoid using cocktail sticks and coffee stirrers because they're made out of wood, and the wood can, over time, maybe little bits and pieces of it go into the paint, and if you're flushing it through an airbrush, it's not going to do the airbrush any good. When I'm cleaning the airbrush, I've got the airbrush cleaner there, and I'll show you how I use that later when I'm cleaning the airbrush out. It's an aerosol. You get them from hobby shops and online as well. That is ideal and quite essential actually for keeping your airbrush in tip-top condition. Another thing I'll touch on later as well is I've got a little cleaning brush from Tamiya. The old adage goes, if you look after your tools will look after you. And it's the same with the airbrush. If you clean it out and maintain it properly, it'll give you years and years of fault-free operation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through how I would dismantle and clean an airbrush after a painting session. Now, for example, if I was doing a grey and then cleaning it out and using a red and then maybe another grey, I wouldn't dismantle it. I would just give it a quick flush through with the airbrush cleaner. But at the end of the paint session, after I've done my painting for the day, I would always strip it down, give it a quick clean out, and it'll be ready to go the next time I need it. First off, I always wear protective gloves when I'm doing my airbrushing. It keeps your hands clean, it keeps all the nasty chemicals off your skin as well. If I was doing the airbrushing and the cleaning off camera, I'd always wear my protective mask with the correct filters to stop all those little particles of enamel and acrylic getting into your lungs. I don't know if you can see it in the camera there, but I've been painting brickwork recently, and the kind of red tinge on the filters proves that it is actually working. Okay, I use an airbrush cleaning pot, and it's basically a reservoir for all the nasties that you spray off, and all the chemicals and anything left in the actual paint cup. It's got a small kind of foam filter in there which needs changed regularly, so you can buy them separately online, quite cheap. Postage will probably cost more than the actual filters, to be honest. So that acts as a rest, and it also allows me to flush any of the nasties into the pot, so it's not going again into atmosphere. And this filter will take out the worst, and it'll just come vapour out the top. Okay. Now when I'm cleaning the airbrush, I always whack the pressure up a little bit. I'm usually airbrushing at about 15 to 25 psi, but when I'm doing the actual cleaning up, I'll turn it up to about 40 or something. First of all, the paint cup has got the remnants of my painting job in it. Okay, that has to be flushed out. So what I'll use some airbrush cleaner. This is Badger, other companies make it, and I always use the kind of little hose fitting on the nozzle. It gets right into the airbrush. Now, kind of cover it so it's a bit splash everywhere, and apply a good spray around the cup there. And again, you flush it through. I don't know if you can see some of the vapour coming out there. Probably to change this filter actually. Okay, I'm going to start by dismantling the actual airbrush. Now, I would make sure you keep these, in a nice flat area, so things rolling around. I sometimes put them in a little tray, or even back in the airbrush box. Okay, so I'll just use a lid for that to keep my parts in. I once lost that little nut up the loft. It disappeared in the insulating underlay. I never saw it again. It cost me a few pounds to buy a new one. They're not cheap. Okay, that bit comes off in the spring. Then you've got the kind of trigger part that comes off. These bits shouldn't be dirty. They shouldn't require any, cleaning. It's the needle and all the nozzle stuff that requires the attention. So next stage would be to pull out the needle. Now, if I put it against the dark there, you can see the dark grime and dirt on the needle. That's just the paint and all the different shades that I've used. The trigger there, again, it shouldn't need clean. Just give it a quick check there's no paint on it. Pop it in the box. Okay, take off the crown, the nozzle, and you can also just take off the end piece there. That allows you to clean the needle and also clean into that area there if required. Now, there's no needle in here just now because obviously I've taken it out, but I'll still need flushed through because the needle will transfer paint back into the chamber. Now you don't want that to dry or it prevents the needle moving in future and you basically knackered your airbrush. It takes a lot of cleaning to get it back. What I'll do then, I'll take my airbrush cleaner and I'll actually put it in the hole at the back where the needle goes and I'll flush it. Now if I was to do that on the desk, just to show you if there's any dirt coming through, there you go. That shows how the paint gets into the actual chamber. Now you could stop there, but what I've got is an airbrush cleaning brush from Tamiya. This little kind of wire with spiral brush on the end, and you just pop it into the airbrush and you basically clean it. It's like cleaning the barrel of a gun. Okay, you can see how I'm pushing all the cleaner through onto the paper towel and really giving it a good clean out. Now there's some gunk on there and I would clean that in turn as well. Then I'm going to give it a little scoosh through. There you go, see? Thought your airbrush was clean. That should now be running clear all the way through. Okay, if I just tip that out, it's starting to be clear. Then what I would do is I would get a paper towel, use a bit of it here, just to clean inside the actual area where the paint mixes with the air, because there's no needle in there, so I'm not going to damage anything. Still messy, you see. And there's also, you could use a cotton bud there as well for doing exactly the same thing. But just watch with the cotton bud, none of the fluff comes off the cotton bud and goes into the airbrush, because then you'll get yourself real trouble. There we go. That's nice and clean. Again, the overspray here, I'm just going to use that to kind of clean the nozzle area, just to clean up. Now, you can dismantle this. There's a small nut there for it, and there's a spanner in the box, but I did that the last time and that doesn't require done every time in my experience. This here is relatively clean, just give it a quick clean out with the brush, maybe a quick spray with the airbrush cleaner there. This airbrush cleaner really is potent stuff. It will remove paint from pretty much any surface. So, and again, it's full of nasty chemicals, so really you should work in a ventilated area and with a mask on. Now lucky I've got the windows open today and I'm only doing a little bit, so I'm okay. If you're in a confined area like the loft, get that mask on. So that bit's clean. The needle just needs a quick wipe. Okay, if there's any stubborn paint on it, again just apply some airbrush cleaner. You can probably see there on the paper towel, a small little bit on the end there. That airbrush cleaner isn't cheap. It's about £6–7 an aerosol, but you know, it's going to keep your airbrush in tip-top condition if you use it regularly. So, okay, I've now cleaned obviously all the internal parts of the airbrush, and it's now ready to go back together. So what I'll do first of all is I'll take the lever, that's got a kind of ball socket, and that goes in to the chamber there, and then I'll take the clean needle and I'll feed that through. Watch, don't bend the needle. Yeah, that's fine. Then I take the kind of trigger mechanism and slide that in. There we go. Then it's a case of the spring. Pop that on. Now you tighten this in to as far as it will go, but don't over tighten things. You never over tighten them. You can lubricate parts of an airbrush using special airbrush lubricating oil, but you've got to go easy with that one. Okay, that goes on to enclose it and keep it all free from damage. So there, what we've got now is we've got the main body of the airbrush. It's all back together and it's clean. The last stage is to clean out the paint chamber, lid and nozzle. Some of the airbrush cleaner in there. Again, the paper towel. Clean out any muck, any dried paint on the rim, the edges. Okay. It's fine inside the nozzle. Same with the lid, quick scoosh. There's a hole in the lid, and there's a reason for that. It's to allow that slight airflow so there's not a vacuum or a build up of pressure, so make sure that hole is actually kept free from paint. And the nozzle as well, you get a small scrap of your paper towels which is wet with the cleaner. Give it a good clean out. Now, the nozzle I'm using is a crown, and that allows us a more direct paint flow into smaller areas if you're doing detail work, so it's kind of in a crown shape. The standard one you get in the kit's just a cylinder. That does fine as well. I just did that, I fitted this one for the inspection pits. So there we go, we've got all the bits clean. So it's now a case of just putting all the final bits back together. Get a nice airflow there. So there I have it. I've taken the airbrush apart, I've cleaned it, checked everything's free from damage, popped it back together. It's now ready to go on its next paint job. No faffing around with blocked airways, caked needles. It's all ready to go, and it'll save you time and it'll save you hassle later on. This airbrush is now 4 or 5 years old, and it's as good as the day I bought it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and for some of you it's dispelled some of the fears regarding ownership of an airbrush. It really is a great piece of kit to use. You've just got to make sure you maintain it regularly. In the meantime, if you want to know anything else, please do get in touch. Thanks for joining me. Cheers just now.